Okay, welcome to presentation number 2. This is Yaxchitlan is the city of Zarahemla. This is a series where we are going to correlate Book of Mormon archaeology with Mesoamerican archaeology. And here in this particular presentation is one of the more compelling things. I think you'll be impressed when we're done with this. We're going to review a little bit about how we go about making these correlations. We approach Book of Mormon archaeological evidence from the aspect of what we call trends or patterns. We look for evidences of specific Book of Mormon stories and events. And by doing this, we have found what we call the Maya matrix. This matrix is founded on the hypothetical assumption that the major characters in the Book of Mormon are also the major characters found in the Maya of Mesoamerica, and that the major cities mentioned in the Book of Mormon are major cities found in Mesoamerica. If the Book of Mormon is true, then we expect that these Book of Mormon people and events will be found. So, the Book of Mormon provides us with a list of 4 kings at Zarahemla that end with a transition to judges. Therefore, we believe this is a unique pattern that we should be able to find. We will not look for exact name changes. And, 30, 40, 50 years ago, when people were starting to look into the correlation, they were looking for names. And when they couldn't find names, they got discouraged and decided that doesn't fit. We can't, because the Book of Mormon says it's this name and we can't find these names. Our viewpoint is Book of Mormon is a translated document. And names, some names don't translate from language to language. And some names change when they go from language to language. However, patterns of names should be embedded in the translation, even though names may have changed. So after comparing the Book of Mormon king list with the Mayan king lists, we found a match for the Book of Mormon city of Zarahemla with the Mesoamerican city of Yaxchitlan. And the bulk of what we're going to show as far as these name patterns is based on a study done by Grube and Martin that they then published in a book called Chronicles of the Mayan Kings and Queens. They went through and they found all of the Mayan king lists from all the different stelas in the cities that were known at the time. It included Calakmul, Caracal, Copan, Dos Pilas, Naranjo, Palenque, Piedras Negras, Quirigua, Tikal, Tonina, and Yaxchitlan. So these are the 11 major Maya cities that have king lists. Now here, we've placed them on a map to demonstrate the relative locations. Notice how the bulk of these are in the Patan of Guatemala. Some are up here in Chiapas, Mexico, on the west side. But most of these are centered in Guatemala. One, Quirigua, is down in Guatemala, but Copan is actually in Honduras. When all of these are considered, the similarities, the best option for the city of Zarahemla is the Maya site known as Yaxchitlan. And take a look at its central location. You get the feel of all the things that take place at Zarahemla, that it kind of was central to their culture. And certainly it is central as far as north-south is concerned, and even as east-west. I don't know that you can find a location that's more exactly in the middle of that region between the different coastlines. Now, below is the Book of Mormon king list pattern, search pattern we employed to compare the Maya king list. We know in the Book of Mormon, while it says here 10 kings, we actually don't know. We know that there's about 300 years worth of kings with the Mulekites. It begins with Mulek. And the next one that we know about is Zarahemla. And Zarahemla then hands the kingdom over to Mosiah. and his son Benjamin, then his son Mosiah, and then Mosiah's boys didn't want to take the kingship. They had to go to judges. We think that this pattern of a grandfather, the son, but the grandson and having the same name as the grandfather, and then ending the king list, that's a pattern we should be able to find. And here it is. Here's the abbreviations of the names in the king list, and we come down here, Etzim Naj Balam, Yoat Balam, Etzim Naj Balam. Those are the Maya names. And then the last name on the list, if you remember, Pahoran had to leave Yashilam because he was driven out by the kingmen. Or he had to leave Zarahemla. He was driven out by the king's men. And there was a usurper on the throne for that period of time until Captain Moroni and Pahoran were able to take Zarahemla back. We believe that that is the last person on the list. That's a usurper name, but he was a king. Etzim Naj Balam, 3, is, we believe, Mosiah the Younger, who then passed on the kingship through the high priest, the chief judge. Here's the comparison of the two lists, one from the Book of Mormon, the other from Yashilam. Zarahemla, we believe, is Nadai Jaguar. Mosiah the Elder is Etzim Naj Balam. Benjamin is Yoat Balam. And Mosiah the Younger is Etzim Naj Balam 3. We're going to center a lot of what we do on Shield Jaguar 2. Because that's the introduction of the Nephites. That's the older Mosiah who first comes down and receives the kingdom from Zarahemla. By the way, I'm not going to go into it, but Not I Jaguar is another way of saying Zarahemla. Zarahemla in Hebrew means seed of sadness. And Not I Jaguar is a visual formation of that meaning, seed of sadness. Talk to me afterwards and I'll show you. So, this is the list of Book of Mormon people that we find listed on stela at Yashilam. King Zarahemla, Mosiah the Elder, Benjamin, Mosiah the Younger, and then the movement to judges, which actually Alma 2 is the first chief judge. We find Alma 1 and 2, and actually their names were included on the king list, but we found the reason why we needed to extract them. If you'll notice here, Etzim Naj Balam, he is a jaguar. Shield Jaguar is what the archaeologists called him, because he's a jaguar, which in the Maya belief system, that's someone of power and authority. And he's preceded by a shield, which is an indication of his military civic purpose, duty. He is a civic leader. He is the king. He's over the military. And so he is Shield Jaguar. He's the military civic authority. Alma 2 and Alma 3 are bird jaguars. The symbolism of the bird is the spirit. It's the concept of the spirit that resides in the tree. The tree is our physical being, and what resides in the tree is the bird. Our spirit nests in this physical body. And so bird to the Maya is the spiritual aspect. And so bird jaguar is a person of spiritual power and authority. In other words, they are the high priests. And so for that reason, we're able to extract bird jaguar 2 and 3 from the equation of the king lists. And that leaves then the exact pattern we're looking for. Zarahemla, then Mosiah, Benjamin, Mosiah. By the way, Captain Moroni is found at Yashilam in the stela. He's referred to as Captain Kantok. That's his Maya name. So here's the entire list, the comparative king lists. In the Book of Mormon, we're told about Mulek, and then we don't hear anything else until Zarahemla, and then Mosiah, Benjamin, Mosiah. Here's how it compares to the Yashitlan king list. This much we know about Shield Jaguar II. I'm telling you right now what the archaeologists say about him. He came to Yashitlan from the highlands. Language and temple building flourished in the lowlands during his reign. His introduction into the lowland culture created a unifying trend, but it also created a strain of royals who laid claim to the throne. These are referred to as sun kings. And as an aside, Amalickiah was a sun king. We found him down in Copan. He's a sun king. He's a Mulekite who was upset that this Mulekite throne was given over to this Nephite, and he no longer had the royal name and power and influence behind him. By parallel, Mosiah came into Zarahemla from the city of Nephi, which, by the way, is located 5,000 feet higher in elevation. So when they said they left the city of Nephi and came down to the city of Zarahemla, they came down in elevation. It's 5,000 feet difference between Yashitlan and Chincoteague. It says that he taught the Mulekites his language. He was appointed king. How did that happen? How does somebody come in from an outside place and displace 300 years history of royal lineage and suddenly become king? The only way that happens usually is with a military coup, with some kind of military force and power where you take over. That's not in the Book of Mormon. He was appointed king. How did that happen? He recorded the list of the Mulekite kings. It says in the Book of Mormon that he wrote it down, but they're not here. They're written down somewhere else. He had a son, Mosiah had a son, that was deeply loved by his people, but there were a strain of royals who laid claim to the throne. These are the kingmen. Do you see the parallels here? They're uncanny. On the left-hand side, there on this slide, is what the archaeologists say about Shield Jaguar II. On the right side is what the Book of Mormon tells us about Mosiah the Elder. Mosiah that came down out of the city of Nephi. It's one after another how these aspects align. And because of that, we firmly state Shield Jaguar II is Mosiah the Elder. You can't, and as we go through this, I'm going to give you one after another, and there's no way that that is circumstance. There's no way that all of these things could fall into place and it just happened to be that way. We have no other option, but we are compelled to say Shield Jaguar II is Mosiah the Elder. So, if Yashitlan is Zarahemla, then this boxed in area here is about the land of Zarahemla. It runs from the sea east over to the borders of the sea west. And it's in the center here against the Lamanites. And this would be the land of Jershon on the East Sea. And it basically is the country of Belize today. This then would be the land bountiful. It's north of Zarahemla. It includes the city bountiful. And then this down below is the land of the Lamanites. It's also referred to as the land of our fathers, the land of Lehi Nephi. Moreover, large population movements described in the Book of Mormon now match population movements that are known to have occurred in ancient Mesoamerica. For example, the Ammonites. If you remember, just real briefly, and encapsulate this story, the sons of Mosiah go down to the Lamanites. They end up converting King Lamoni, and then his father, who's the king of all the Lamanites. It creates an upheaval in their culture that eventually leads to where the people who took the oath never to raise their swords again wind up having to leave their land and go to Jershon so that they could be protected by the Nephites. We now know that they moved from Chalchuapa in El Salvador to Lamani in Belize. That's traceable through pottery. It's traceable through stela that we find in Lamani. It's incredible. From this beginning, we've positively identified several cities based on archaeological evidences of events and historical figures, not on geography alone. What I've just been telling you in the last couple, 3 minutes is how the geography is now beginning to work for us. Once we are able to pin Zarahemla and then use the clues that are given us in the geographical clues that are given us in the Book of Mormon, we're able to then just start lay out lands. And from there, we'll be able to start work with particular cities. And it's amazing how this all begins to flesh out. Yashitlan not only has a king list that correlates to Zarahemla, they also have a group of individuals and series of events that took place in Zarahemla. So it's not just the king's list that's now beginning to match. Shield Jaguar II, Mosiah the Elder, married a woman of royalty named Lady Cook. Sometimes she's referred to as Lady Shock. But that's what the archaeology says. And as a result of that marriage, because the King Nodai Jaguar did not have a male heir, when Shield Jaguar II married Lady Cook, he became king of Yashitlan. If Shield Jaguar II is King Mosiah, then we can now understand how Mosiah was appointed king over the Mulekites. He married the daughter of Zarahemla. He didn't have to bring an army and convince anyone that he was the rightful king. Something happened that compelled this marriage to take place. There are a series of lintel carvings from Temple 23 at Yashitlan that chronicles the marriage of Lady Cook with Shield Jaguar II. Here's a photo of the lintel depicting Lady Cook, who is seen in the lower right. She's over here on the lower right-hand side. She's looking up to a face that emerges from a vision serpent. So, the face of the founder, it is the founder, who appears with his head emerging from the mouth of a Quetzalcoatl serpent. Here's Lady Cook. Down here at the bottom you see an offering bowl. And out of that offering bowl comes this vision serpent. And here's the mouth of the serpent. And emerging out of the mouth is what they have identified, the archaeologists have identified this as the founder of their king line. And notice that he carries a spear and a shield. The shield meaning he is the king. He is the civil leader of the civic leader of the group. Archaeologists claim that Lady Cook is petitioning her ancestor. The text states that the founder gives his approval for Lady Cook to marry Shield Jaguar II. We believe that she understood this marriage would potentially cause turmoil. We're talking 300 years at least. And if truly this is an extension of the Israelite throne, it goes far beyond 300 years. Mulek was a son of Zedekiah. He was a prince to the Jewish throne. So it's going beyond 300 years, but at least in the Americas, you've got a 300-year period. She knew this was not going to set well with some people. It would cause turmoil among her people, so she prayed to her God and was shown this answer in a vision. And can put yourself in her position for a minute. Knowing that this is going to potentially cause problems. And this concern is festering over a period of time. And as she is contemplating how this is going to play out, she goes to God in prayer. And somehow this vision appears. And it is her ancestor, the founder, Mulek, that comes to her and says, yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. You need to do this. Think about how important that moment was for her, because there was going to be years of strife ahead in the people that she would have to deal with, and the political intrigues that would take place because of people who were once powerful and now weren't even being considered for it. There was a relationship that she now had with Mulek, the very first one who was here. In the second lintel, Lady Cook is shown performing a bloodletting ceremony in front of Shield Jaguar. She's pulling a thorned rope through her tongue. Now, archaeologists believe that this depiction is a literal event. When they talk about these kind of things, they talk about it as if it literally happened. We disagree. We believe that Lady Cook is taking a sacred oath to bind her speech to the religion of self-sacrifice as she yields to a greater authority. Here again, at the bottom down here, is the offering bowl. And out of that offering bowl comes this rope which is symbolic of a bond, of something that is binding. This particular offering rope has thorns that come off of it. Thorns to indicate self-sacrifice, that there are times when having this bond is going to be painful. But it's one that needs to be done. We believe that, and here she has on this cloak that is clearly a Mayan indication of royalty. The ornateness and the squares that are involved here, that is a artistic illustration that indicates royalty. She is submitting to this man who is carrying this very long rod, of which out of the top comes holy fire. This is sacred fire. And it is being held over her. She is now under the influence of that sacred fire. And that sacred fire is touching the top of her headdress, of her crown. And so there is a blending of these two groups now. The third lintel shows Shield Jaguar 2 receiving the crown from Lady Cook. Again, the jaguar head, the power and the authority, the civil crown itself. This scene completes the marriage ceremony. So these three lintels are found at Temple 23 at Yashit-Lan. None of this negates Book of Mormon scripture. To the contrary, it explains the given circumstances even more clearly. And there is more information we can discern. I'm saying discern, concerning the marital status of Shield Jaguar 2, who we believe is Mosiah the Elder. The largest single problem with proving that Lady Cook was Zarahemla's oldest daughter is the lack of family lineage. This is a disclaimer. It is known and accepted by all archaeologists know that she's royalty. She's listed on lists out of Kalak Mu, and he's listed out of, Zarahemla is listed on lists out of Piedras Negras. But her father's name has not yet been found in Yashit-Lan. It is widely believed that her father would have been the one to appoint her husband king. Now, stop and think about it. There are name glyphs that have been erased from lineage stela at Yashit-Lan. We believe the Sun Kings, or the Kingmen, were responsible for this. They were angry that Zarahemla relinquished the throne to Mosiah. In other words, when the usurper king came in, when Pahoran was pushed out for that period of time, whatever it was, just like in Egypt, if you wanted to have someone's name put in enmity forever, you erased it, you blotted it out. And we think the usurper king and the king's men did that they blotted out his name because he's the one who gave up the throne. He abdicated it and gave it to this Nephite who came in out of nowhere, and what right does he have to be a king over us? If Lady Cook is the daughter of Zarahemla, then she is Jewish royalty through the throne line of Zedekiah. The Book of Mormon tells us that. Mulek was a son of Zedekiah. If Sheol-Jaguar too is Mosiah, then he is a Josephite, as Lehi revealed to us once he received the brass plates and discovered his lineage. You remember the story. Lehi is following the impress of the Spirit. He's prophesying to the people there in Jerusalem, and finally is told, buddy, you need to get out because your life's in danger. I got something I need for you to do. He takes his family, goes out and camps in the wilderness for a while, sends his sons in to get the brass plates. Once the brass plates make it back to the camp, he starts reading and he goes, my, I'm a descendant of Joseph. He didn't know before that time that he was a descendant of Joseph. We find out later on it's probably through Manasseh, because that's mentioned later on in the text of the Book of Mormon. Therefore, we have represented here the southern kingdom of Israel through the lineage of Zarahemla's daughter, and the northern kingdom of Israel represented through the lineage of Mosiah. The marriage of Mosiah and the daughter of Zarahemla fulfills many promises. It healed the breach of the Israelite throne when the sons of Solomon created a northern and southern kingdom. Remember, David was the first to actually unify all of Israel into one nation. And through that unification, his son Solomon built the temple. And when Solomon passed, his sons then began a skirmish and ended up dividing the kingdom into the northern and southern kingdoms again. This marriage of this daughter of Zarahemla and of Mosiah unified the divided throne and reestablished the throne of David. If this did take place, then King Benjamin was the first offspring of the Israelite united throne. He would be very special indeed. The marriage bound the promises of both lineages together. The right to rule until Shiloh comes is promised to Judah. In other words, the Jewish kings were a placeholder until one who was worthy to rule would come and sit on that throne. And the promise that Joseph's brethren would bow down to him from generation to generation, for Joseph will be a light unto his brethren to bring salvation. What does that represent right there? The right to rule, but she is submitting that right and bowing down to the spiritual light and power of the tribe of Joseph. By possessing the brass plates, Mosiah was able to bring the record of the Israelite people to the Mulekites, which they admitted. Prior to that, they had no written language whereby they could preserve their history. He brought with him the spiritual knowledge that was distributed to the Mulekite Nephite population. This knowledge of spiritual prophecy and promise was the preparation for the seed of the gospel that was eventually brought to them through Benadai and then through Alma. The gospel knowledge that they received prepared the people of Mesoamerica to receive the Melchizedek priesthood, as alluded to in the 10th chapter of Alma. And if you are curious what I'm alluding to there, go read it. And it talks about being the sons sons of God, becoming the sons of God, which is the same thing that's referred to about Melchizedek in Hebrews. With this priesthood, the people could develop further through the power of the Holy Spirit and prepare to greet a risen Christ when it was time. So all of this is a preparation for God actually coming in the flesh and visiting the people. When it comes to King Benjamin, very little is known about him from the archaeological record. His Maya name is Yoat-Balam II. Very little is known about him because there's almost nothing recorded about him at Yashit-Lan. But remember about King Benjamin. If Yoat-Balam is King Benjamin, then we would not expect to find much concerning him. He was a humble servant king. He would not tolerate his name being displayed everywhere. And on top of that, he is still seen by many of the Mulekites as a Nephite. He knows what his heritage is. He knows what's coming down the road in preparation for a Christ. And he talked in his speech, he talked about the angel that visited him. And so he was not trying to rub salt in the wound by having his name thrown up everywhere, all over Yashit-Lan or all over Zarahemla. He was very quiet in his demeanor and was very subdued in how he ruled with the people. Note that unifying the Nephite people with the Mulekite people did not go over well. There were Jewish lineage heirs to the throne who would never again be considered a viable choice to rule once Mosiah assumed the kingship. Mosiah and his bride understood the gravity of not getting the majority of the population to agree with this change. One of the ways to appease the Mulekite masses would be to demonstrate that the Mulekite heritage would continue to be honored and respected. And one of the ways that Sheol-Jaguar II demonstrated that, he honored the Mulekite histories by placing the list of Mulekite kings on hieroglyphic stairway number 3 at Yashit-Lan. This is that hieroglyphic stairway. Actually, here at the base is the steps that have the list of the kings. And here at the very bottom is the founder. And the next step up is the next king. And the next one's the next king. And it's basically giving you the sense that as you climb the steps, that you are being elevated with each successive reign to a point where eventually there was a unification that took place. On this level that I'm pointing out here, to the right is Temple 23 that I told you about that had the lintels on it. It's Lady Cook's story of the marriage. On the left is Sheol-Jaguar II's Temple 21 that talks about his ascension to the priesthood. And we believe that it's on this level and that this stele is here because it's representing the unification of those two aspects of the Hebrew lineage. And from there, they're elevated up to these higher realms. This particular temple up here is Temple 33. It's to Lady Cook, but it also includes the bird jaguars, both bird jaguar 3 and 4, which are the Almas, which are the high priests. And over to the left, behind this group of trees over here, is Temple 26 that we believe talks about King Benjamin. So here is this beautifully illustrated in the architecture, the story that is only hinted at in the Book of Mormon. But once we begin to understand the archaeology, and once we begin to draw the parallels between what the archaeology tells us and what the Book of Mormon tells us, all of a sudden things begin to fall into line. Another example is the name of the first prince born to Sheol-Jaguar II and Lady Cook. This is another example of what they did to appease the Mulekites. The king name that follows Sheol-Jaguar II is Yoat-Balam II. It is the same name as the founder of the Mulekite lineage. And by extrapolation, we now know that Mulekite's given name was King Benjamin. Now, Here we see the king list again. At the very top is Yoat Balaam, which we have drawn the parallel that that's Mulek. And you don't see Yoat Balaam again until you get down here to Benjamin. He's Yoat Balaam too. Why would Lady Cougar, why would the daughter of Zarahemla choose that name? She saw him in a vision. She had a connection with him. He's the one who said, yep, you need to marry this man. It's going to fulfill prophecy. You need to do this. And so she named her firstborn son after the one, in honor of the one who gave her the permission. On lintel 52, Bird Jaguar 3, who we believe is Alma 1, is depicted as the founder of the church. And Sheol Jaguar 3, which is Mosiah the Younger, is in attendance. This is actually how the Book of Mormon tells the story. Alma 1 had already founded the church before arriving in Yashilam. You remember, Alma was one of the priests of Noah. Abinadi was prophesying, was about ready to be put to death, and Alma wanted to step in and stop it. And now they were chasing Alma. They were going to put him to death too. He escapes. He starts a church, baptizing at the waters of Mormon. Then they establish a city called Helam, I believe it is. And then it falls under control of the Lamanites. They escape the control of the Lamanites, go down to Zarahemla. And they arrive in Zarahemla. Mosiah says, I want you to start a church here. Start a church here. Mosiah the Younger commissioned Alma 1 to build the church in his kingdom. Therefore, this rendition is not in conflict with the Book of Mormon story. And we know that this is regarding, if you'll see his right hand, he has what's called a serpent staff, and there's a god K on top of it. It's a little, they call it a mannequin god, but it's what we have come to understand. It's a representation of the Holy Spirit. And so Alma is holding a representation of the power and authority of the Holy Spirit. And you'll see here that Sheol Jaguar 3 also he's been following the same spirit. But now he relinquishes this to the greater power that the high priest has. That now Alma 1 is the high priest at Zarahemla. There's also a Book of Mormon story that tells Mosiah the Younger passing the records to Alma 2. Mosiah the Younger is Sheol Jaguar 3, and Alma 2 is Bird Jaguar 4. This is that particular stela. The bloodletting ritual shown on stela 3 references Mosiah the Younger and Alma 2. We believe that this ritual is symbolic. And of great importance to us, we can see this event also has something to do with the passing of plates. So let's real quick look at this. These are Mayan codices. Codexes is what they wrote on. They folded in kind of an accordion fashion to create a book. There are, on top of that, there are illustrations of bond or covenant. And coming down out of the hands up above are streams of blood, droplets, but they're formed in the form of a corn leaf, an upside down corn stalk. And we'll see a better illustration of this here in a minute. But in essence, what it's saying, blood is life. The cornstalk is life. Cornstalk is also referred to as the Word. It is food, the Word. And so these are the words of life that are being poured over into these books, into these plates. Why are there 6 folds? Because God created the heaven and earth in 6 days, and on the 7th he rested. 6 refers to the work of God. So these are the words of life that are the work of God, and these plates are being passed from this person to the next. Here's an illustration, same thing. Lintel 2, La Pasadita, is another rendition of the passing of the plates. This was very important record
very important for them to record. Again, the 6 plates, the bond or covenant, and the words of life, the droplets of blood in the form of a cornstalk pouring down into it. And it's going from one to the other. It's the passing of the plates from one to the other. This is a flapstaff ceremony with bird jaguar 4, which is Alma 2, and shield jaguar 3, which is Mosiah the Younger. This event portrays when Mosiah retired the throne and Alma 2 became the chief judge. The flapstaff is a representation of the power and authority of the kingship, and it's being passed to this spiritual leader here, which we know is Alma. This event is mentioned in the Book of Mormon. It seems that a specific event occurring in both the Book of Mormon and Mesoamerica is not coincidental. So because we find that the historical figures and specific historical events recorded at Yashitlan fit the prominent Book of Mormon characters and stories recorded at Zarahemla, we can conclude that Yashitlan is the Book of Mormon city of Zarahemla. Not only are the historical figures a faithful parallel, but we note that the geography and interactions with other cities and subculture groups are consistent with Book of Mormon stories. Again, after assessing the entire body of evidence for being the city of Zarahemla, we find an overwhelming list that signifies this site as a direct parallel to Zarahemla. We are therefore compelled to ignore the official dates assigned by Mayan culture, or to the Mayan culture. They date this while it's kind of pre-classic and into the classic. They still date this site around the 450 to 550 AD, which does not fit all the events that we just talked about. All the events we just talked about are the 150 to 90 BC. So we pull out on the dates. We continue to state the claim that this trend will continue as we move forward and investigate the Mayan culture as a parallel to the stories in the Book of Mormon. So this completes this particular section. The next one we'll talk about is Chincoteague as the city of Nephi, which has stela that are just as compelling as the ones that you just saw. Thank you.